Yo, what is going on, trading family? It's been a little minute. Today's video might be a little bit long, but just giving y'all an update on what's been going on with me, what's been happening, and yeah, where we kind of at. So I'm gonna talk about what's been going on the last few days, the reason why I haven't posted. I'm gonna talk about how my trading went today, and before that, I'm actually gonna talk about kind of where I've been in a mental space since the last video. So just starting out, I didn't post last week. I was out visiting family, went to Invest Fest, which was a great event. If you are into trading, I highly recommend trying to make your way out to Invest Fest if you have an opportunity. Happens usually August of each year out in Atlanta. So phenomenal event. Like I said, I can't say enough about it. Definitely a lot of good information provided. So definitely make it out today if you have an opportunity. I'll for sure be back next year. But let's get into the reason why I haven't been posting. So besides me traveling, which obviously made it a little bit harder to post, I just had to go back, reevaluate my own notes, see what I was doing initially that gave me success, and see what I had started doing that was causing my failures. With that being said, I realized that when I first was trading and I was having a good bit of success initially, there were a couple things that I always did consistently. Number one, I was never afraid to take profits. I don't care if my TP was hit or not. If I had $500 on the board and maybe I was getting uneasy or uncomfortable or anxiety was kicking on the trade, before letting the trade go negative or before letting it fall back down or before any other emotion kicked in, I was taking profits. Some people might say, oh, you need to let it ride out to your full TP. If you want to do that, then that's on you. But as for me personally, if I have $500 on the board, that is a great day. Think about it. If you only have one account, you got $500 on the board, and you take that $500. Like I always say, $400 will get you to six figures a year if that can be your average. If you have $500, that's kicking you to 125 a year if you can make that your average. But hold on just a little bit. Let's take it one step further. Here in futures, you also have what's called copy trading. So think about it from that perspective. If you have a $500 win, whether it hit TP or not, and say you have 3 or 4 accounts that you're copy trading with, that $500 easily turns into 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever number depending on the number of accounts you have copy trading. If you have 3 accounts, a $500 gain turns into a $1,500 gain. So don't let anybody ever tell you not to take profits or it needs to hit your TP or this, that, or the third. Never be afraid to take profits. I've always been one of them people, unfortunately, in the past where I try to let stuff ride to the very tip top, to the very edge. Get the most out of it I can. And the reality of it is, sometimes you'll win and it'll make it to whatever your goal is or whatever you think is going to be the tip top. And other times you don't. I've actually watched and lost a lot of money trying to do that and having that what I call hopium in my system, hoping that it's going to make it to a certain point. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes we will make it to that certain point. But in trading, as we already know, nothing is guaranteed. If everything was guaranteed, then all of us would be, green every single trade, making millions and millions of dollars, and everybody would do it. But as we know, that's not the case. So if you got money on the table, and like I said, you feeling uneasy, then it's fine to close that trade out, take all the money off. Or even close out half of it maybe so that way you can secure something. Or even move that stop loss up to be sure that you get something. But never be afraid to take money off the table and put it in your pocket. Never, ever be afraid. So that's the first thing. I was doing that initially, and then I stopped doing that, and I would let trades play out. And if you've been trading for the last few weeks, you know that the market has been kind of choppy. So there were plenty of trades I made where I just got chopped out. It would be going my direction for a little bit, and then just due to the way the market went, it wouldn't make it to my TP. So that's one thing I noticed that I had stopped doing. I quit taking those easy wins. Another thing I realized that I was doing is that I was going for bigger gains. I was trying to reduce risk and put less or risk less. So instead of doing 10 or 15 contracts, I would do 3 or 4 contracts. If you do that, it's nothing wrong with it. Let me tell you, let me be the first to say that. If you do that, it is nothing wrong with it. But the reality of it is, there's more than one way to trade. There's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to go about it. So you can either, trade 5 contracts and go for a 20-point move, or you can trade 10 contracts and go for a 10-point move. In the end, both have the potential of hitting. In the end, you make the same amount of money whether you traded 5 or whether you traded 10, depending on what the end goal was. So never be afraid or never think that, I need to trade less contracts. I've come to realize that I don't have I guess you can say whatever you want to say, but I'm going to say I don't have the mental fortitude to to wait for a 30 or 40 point move all the time. If I got a solid 20-point move on the board that I put up, 15 or 20 micros on, like, that's solid. That's solid right there. Only in trading do people get mad about making money. It's always, oh man, I made 1,000, but if I could have, would have, should have, did this, I could have made 2,000. I could have made 3,000. This, that, or the third. But at the end of the day, nothing is wrong with making money. Green is green. You have some people that trade and their mentality is, okay, I want to get a big win. And they might have a win percentage of, 40%, which can still be profitable. But then you have other traders that might have a win percentage of 60%, because instead of trying to wait for these huge gains, they're just going for the small gains. Let me get in and get out, get my money, and go about my business. It doesn't mean that either one is wrong. You just have to find out what works for you, and I got away from what works for me. So moving forward, I'm going back to trading my, somewhere between 10 and 20 micros, depending on where my stop loss is set and the risk that goes in. That'll determine how much or how many contracts I want to trade. But it'll be somewhere between 10 to 20, likely falling at about the 15 range is what I found to kind of be my sweet spot. But I'll adjust as needed. But that's pretty much where I'm at. 15 contracts. Let me get anywhere from a 15 to 20 point move. If I can get more, if I see there's room to get more, then I'll get more. But I'm not going to be stubborn and leave money on the table and watch it go completely back the other direction when I could have took that easy money and lived to fight another day. All right, so that's next up. So let's go into what I did today. So today is Friday, the 14th of August. I made in total, I think, 6 trades today, and we're going to visit them real quick. So let me go over to contracts. Once again, contracts is on the Google Play Store. It might be getting on Apple soon. I'm still working on that, but it is on the Google Play Store. And this is pretty much where we're at as far as trading. So the 14th, I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trades. So let's talk about it here. So some of these numbers, even though they're the same profit and loss, they are different trades. I set these at 750 because I'm kind of mentally practicing for doing my evaluation again. And the goal for the 25K account is 1,500. So if you can get 750 and 750, then you can pass in your 2 days and have that 50% consistency. So that's the reason why these numbers are like this. But anyway, so my first trade I took here, I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway on this one. You might call it cheating or whatever, but this is pretty much what I did. Let's look at it. So I didn't add a picture, but I can show you on the chart here in a second. So trade theses, orb ranging, long wick to outside of top of the orb, played a short to come back to the, oh wait, I'm sorry, these are actually out of order. Let me go back. I think it was this one, I want to say. I think it was this one. Let me go back over here and see. So let me pull up. paper. This was all paper trading, by the way. So my first one for the day filled at a buy of 32.16. So 32.16 is right here. So my first trade of the day, right here is when I got in on it. So right on this candle. Or wait, why is it? I'm tripping. It was a buy. Where am I missing? Where did I get 32.16? Am I looking at the wrong? I think I'm looking at the wrong thing. Bear with me. These ended up getting out of order when I put them in. Okay, it was this one here. All right, here. So this is actually my first one. So simply not focusing to start the day. Shooter candle created, but my mind for some reason registered it as a hammer. Got in short when it should have been long. Sorry about that, y'all. So this is looking at, I think, the 1 minute chart. I had the 30-second chart pulled up to kind of break it down further. So what happened was I got into this trade for whatever reason. Reading this, I don't know, my mind registered it as a hammer even though it's inverse. So I was planning on going short, or like I should have been going long, but I put in a short. I don't know, my mind just wasn't functioning. Late flight last night. So let's go back over, revisit it real quick. So this is the third one down. So my entry was 3202 and my exit was 302.16. So let's go back over here. 3202, so right here. So on this candle, I entered right here expecting for it to go back down. So what ended up happening is I was playing the orb. The orb range was, let's see, so this is 931, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the orb range low was here. I watched it come out, watched it come back and retest. I saw the wick here on the 5 minute, or on the 1 minute, I'm sorry. I saw the wick. This wick here, and for some reason my mind registered as, oh, I need to get in, when although I saw the wick, this wick is saying it's gonna go up, not down, dummy. But anyways, I had a brain fart. I set my stop loss just inside of the orb range, and of course it didn't go my direction. That's just me not paying attention. I literally just woke up. Like, trading starts at 6:30 Arizona time. I woke up at like 6:25 and just rolled over in bed and was barely turning my computer on. Anyways, don't do that. You know, have a chance to sit and mentally prepare. But anyways, I completely just read this wrong. I should have been going long, and instead I ended up going short. Got stopped out. It is what it is. And then I came and made a second trade to actually go long once I realized, hey, you know, I made a mistake. And my second trade is this one here. So rushing to get in, did a market order with no stop loss or target set. I saw the reversal had happened, but got nervous due to no stop loss and no price fall, and the price was falling quickly. So this is, I guess you can say, I don't really want to call it a revenge trade because it was just me correcting the wrong from my first trade. So I got in here. The actual number I got in at, let's see what it was. 32.22. So 20 points higher. So 222 is here. So I got in right around this area here. And what happened is, once I got in, I'm like, okay, I see it's going higher. But like I said, I never set a stop loss. I never set a target. I just hopped in as a market order. Maybe y'all don't know, but I always do limit orders. I always wait on a wick down back to my limit order, or it's always going to range a little bit. So I always wait for a wick down. I'll set up everything how I want it to make sure I'm comfortable with my trade going in. This time here, I was just messing around. Not really messing around, but I switched the settings to where I had the, what do you call it, the one click trade or whatever, to where you can just hit buy or hit sell and automatically you're in the trade. It doesn't ask you to set anything before actually confirming. You're just in there directly. So I had to pretty much cut that feature on, trying to test it and kind of see what I thought about it. It ain't for me. And I hopped in the trade, like I said, right around here, expecting for it to go up, which it did. I already saw it come back into the orb range hard. So I already saw this. But normally, if I was thinking straight and going off of how I usually do stuff, I would have set me a limit order for here with my stop loss down here, since this was already like a new, temporary demand zone. And then I would have set my targets up here. That's how I would have set this up if I was, doing a limit order like I normally do. But I just click buy. And automatically when I click buy, like before I even barely clicked the button, I was already down like $200. Because of course, when you buy and the market is moving fast, then it's going to plug you at just whatever price. And I'm not good with that. I want to know exactly where I'm getting in at so I can manage my risk better. So I click buy, and immediately as soon as I click buy, I was like, oh crap, like nothing is set. And my mind immediately went to just get out of it. Like, why are you doing this? Just get out of it. So I quickly just closed it out. I didn't try to wait for it to come back up. I didn't try to let it play out. I just, I just closed it right back out. And as y'all see, based on where the system caught me is closing out at, I pretty much ended up losing the same amount. I don't know how that ended up being the same amount on both of these, but just happened to end up being the same amount I ended up losing. So these were my first two trades of the day. And then I said, all right, let me chill for a second. Let me quit playing around. Let me focus and lock in, because today is going to be the day. I've had a solid past 2 days. I'm not going to let one day mess me up, doing something crazy I'm not supposed to do. This is a paper trade. I went back to paper trading. Now it's been on 2 weeks, on and off for the last 2 weeks. I've missed some days, obviously, due to Invest Fest and other stuff. But I've been paper trading the last 2 weeks, getting back to what I was doing prior. So I logged back in, let it do its thing, and then I did my third trade. My third trade was, I'm pretty sure it was this one here. Yeah, it was this one here. So orb ranging, long wick to the outside of the top of the orb, played a short to come back to the other side. So notes, keep in mind when doing market order, it does move stop loss along with the market. So this is the one I'd initially started talking about, and then I kind of had a brain fart as far as what order I did these trades in. So I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway on this one. I'm marking it as a win because mentally it was, but I've learned on my execution, I was once again trying to do another market order. I turned off the one-click order, but I still left it as market. Like I said, I normally always do limit. And so what I did was this. I hopped in at a market. I set my stop loss up here outside of this supply zone, this short-term supply zone. And I had set my limit order initially right around here. And then I set my target down in this area. And what happened is that I switched my limit to a market because everything was moving quick. And I'm like, let me try doing a market order to see if me setting everything up prior to clicking market order, if it will make any difference. And so unfortunately, whenever I did this, like I said, I'm paper trading, so I still can mess up. I can still try stuff and see what I like, what I don't like. But when I did that, I didn't realize that although I had set my stop loss, I had set my target, that when you're in a market order, as the market moves, your stop loss and your TP are also shifting. Like all of your points are shifting at the same time. I didn't realize that. So what happened was my initial stop loss was actually up here, but since the market moved a little bit down, it moved my stop loss to like here because the market shifted. And so technically speaking, I ended up getting tapped out here. So you can count it as a loss, but I still played it out in my mind like, okay, I needed to just do a limit order. Like, I didn't know that market would automatically move my stop loss and my TP. But my TP was set down here, and as y'all see, it did make it down this way. Yeah, it took a couple minutes to flip around, but it did make it down this way. So I marked it as a win in my books based on what I know I should have done. You can mark it as a loss in your books, however you want to do it. But for my mental and for how I know that I would have or I need to trade that, I still marked it as a win because I did set everything up properly for the play. Like I said, I just didn't realize that when doing a market order that your stop loss and TP are all shifting at the same time. If my stop loss had stayed where it was, which was up here above this supply, and then I would have been good. Although this wicked up, it never got above. I would have been straight. But anyways, it is what it is. But even with losing that trade, even if you were to take that one as a loss, like the day still actually ended up being green with the other trades I did. So I ended up getting this trade for $750. So those two canceled each other out. This was a true green trade. I ended up getting this one for $502 and this one for $525. So these are more than these, and then these canceled. So I would have still ended up having a green day even if I would have messed up. So I took that as a positive. Like I said, I just gave myself credit on this. Even though technically it wasn't credit, I still gave myself credit because I did have the right mentality with doing it. So then another trade. So this was my fourth trade of the day. So this one here, orb still ranging, long wick out the bottom side of the orb this time. And I played it to the upside. So what ended up happening after I made that trade, y'all see it came down. And I had this wick that bounced off the bottom range of the orb. This red line is the bottom range of the orb. And so I hopped in here because I saw, long wick. So obviously buying pressure is coming back up. Look, I got another green candle look like forming and another long wick pushing it back up. So I went ahead and hopped in at what was the price on this one? $32.20. Again, I guess that was the number of the day. So $32.20. I ended up hopping back in right around here. And when I hop back in, as y'all see, or I guess not as y'all see, but it pretty much went right back up. I got back in here, set my stop loss down below the outside of the orb. It did wick down for a quick second, like a real quick second. Like this wick was super fast, and then came right back up and hit my TP. Even though it ended up hitting the very top range of the orb, I wanted to play it safe, so I made my TP be what does it say I got out at? 32.45. So a 25-point move. $750 in this particular case off of 15 contracts. 25-point move from 30.22 to 30 or 32.22 to 32.45. Almost a 25-point move right there. But I just used a good bit of contracts to make sure that it was worth it. Then it went ahead and once again I saw another wick outside of the orb, once again hitting this supply zone, and I saw a second wick showing some indecisiveness, and I decided to go in for it once again and make another trade. So that one is this one here. After riding from the bottom side range to the top side, decided to hop back in after seeing another long wick to the outside of the top, which was also the pivot point line / resistance area. So one thing I started doing is playing these yellow lines, which I call pivot points. It pretty much means at some point or another, when I'm looking at the 4 hour or the 1 hour, that this area has either been a support or resistance point. And so I mark it out with a yellow line now. So not only was this a pivot point, meaning support / resistance depending on which way you're going, but it was also the top range of the orb. So I'm like, okay, it acted as resistance here. Let me see if it's going to act as resistance again. We already got this long wick on this inverse on this inverse hammer here. So I'm like, we should be pushing down. Obviously, this one we had some indecision and the price hadn't really moved any. So I went ahead and got back in. On this one, looks like I got in at 30,260. So I got in right on this line, right at the very, very like tippy top of this candle. And I had already won at this point, like I said, a couple trades. So I'm like, all right, this is just icing on the cake. So I didn't aim all the way for the other side of the orb this time. I'm like, let me just get what I can get. Let me get what I know for sure I can get. So I went ahead and did it, and I got out at 30,243, as you see here, which is still almost a 2R. But no, I wasn't trying to go for another home run because this could have easily been another 2.5. As y'all see, it still continued to go down. But sometimes you got to play it safe. Like I said, I was already up. I was already doing good. Let me just, like I said, add some icing on the cake. Go for, a nice, easy target while keeping the stop loss short. Once again on this one, I set my stop loss just a tad bit up. It shows here. Where did I set my stop loss at? Does it show it? Stop loss was set at 32.69, and I got in at 32.60. So literally a 10-point stop loss, which is very, very small on 15 contracts. So my stop loss was literally just right up here, right at the very top of the orb. Let's stretch this out some. So if I'm looking at it, my orb or my stop loss was right here, right at the top of the orb. Maybe a little bit too close for comfort, but I felt comfortable with getting in and taking my chances. I think I did end up adjusting it just slightly up a little bit after I got into the trade, maybe like 1 or 2 points, but it was pretty much right here outside of the top orb range, which is this green line. And as y'all see, it came on down. I did a quick little, once again, almost 25 points, and we were good. Simple as that. So I had, in this particular case, a win for a 1.6, 1.2, 1.8. And then I did one other final trade. I let it come back down, come back down, come back down. If y'all see here, where is it at? So here, if y'all notice, I got into a trade here, a short, and I got out of it here. So on a 1 minute chart, it looks a little bit funky. But let me switch to the 5 minute chart for you guys. I think it would, no, actually let me switch to, I'll switch to a 5 and I'll switch to a 15. That makes it easier. So if y'all look on the 5 minute chart, like I said, the yellow marks are my pivots. Those are where I've seen the market go up, go down, reverse, so on and so forth. So what happened here? It came down, came down, came down. I wasn't paying no attention to it. I happened to look back at my computer and I'm like, okay, we're right by one of my pivot points. Let me see what happened. So this candle, this long engulfing candle had just formed. And I was like, all right, this long engulfing formed. I think we might be coming down a good bit. And I'm like, we right at my pivot point. So I let this candle here, this green one, play out. And I'm like, all right, we got another one with a super long wick on it. So I'm like, but the wick ended, or the candlestick ended right at this pivot point. So I'm still just letting this play out to see what comes about. So then I see we end this wick right at my pivot point, and then we get a push down. I'm like, all right, we might be in business. Let me see what I can come up with. Let me make a play based on this pivot point for it to go down. But again, I'm not going for a home run. I'm going for a beefy short win. So I got into it right on this candle. So for this particular one here, that was this trade here. I got in at 30074 and I exited at 30056. So another 20 points. But look, this was a 2.5 R. My stop loss was tight. My stop loss was at 2081. So 7 points between here where I entered and this, a 7 point stop loss. Very, very tight on it. I risked 200 with the opportunity to gain. I think initially I set my target to be like 3.5. And then, like I said, I thought about it and I was like, hey, let me play it safe. I'm already doing good. Let me take the money off the table while it's available. So what I went ahead and did is my stop loss initially was down here, just above this floating demand zone. I'm calling it a floating demand zone because this orange area actually adjusts based on what's showing on the chart. And I was like, let me go ahead and take what I can get out of this. So I let it come down, let it come down, let it come down. And like I said, I moved my TP up. And I was like, yeah, I think we're at a good spot here because now if this isn't going to be in a downtrend anymore, because when you look at it, like we had already come down a good bit. We could have been creating a higher low, then another lower low. That's a possibility. Or it could be like it played out here. Well, we were actually already had our low. Then we had a higher high, a higher low, and so on and come back up. So I was like, let me play it safe. Instead of going for the lower low, let me go for like just this safe point, I guess you can say. So I'm like, I'm above where the previous low was, but I still have a 20-point move here on the board that I know I can for sure get and lock in some profits. So 2056, this is pretty much exactly where I sold at. Right here where my mouse is. 20-point move, $500. Like I said, I could have tried to go for the big money. I could have moved it way further down, but I didn't. I went ahead and took what the market gave me, covering my bases. If it went higher, if it came down and then started to trend higher, I wasn't too low to where I miss it, but I wasn't too high to where I risk, it just running off on me and then I'm back in the red. But also at the same time, I see and already knew that it was coming down a good bit. I didn't know how far, but I'm like, based on this price action, based on the candle pattern that I'm seeing, we're going to the downside. Let me go ahead and take advantage of this. And that's pretty much was all my trades for the day. But if you do the math, I ended up profitable, even if you take out that one big quote unquote winner that I marked that was technically a loser on paper because of the movement of the stop loss. But today was a great day. It was a great confidence boost for me. I'm back as far as doing what I was doing before. Tight stop losses, short targets, and just letting it do its thing. 15 to 20 points is really all you need each day if you're playing. I'm not going to say playing. If you're working with a decent amount of contracts. I'm doing all micros because it gives me a little bit more, I guess you can say, advantage to how much I'm risking. And each trade, I try to only risk between about 200 to 250. That's my number. 200 to 250. That's that's all that I want to risk. But I always try to get 400 or more out of the trade. That's the goal. 400 or more. If I feel that I can confidently get 400 or more, I'll go for it. $400, if you're trading 15 contracts, is really only about a 15 to 17 point move, somewhere right in there. If you want to get to $500, as I already showed on this one, that's pretty much going to be a 20 point move, or a little bit over a 20 point move. This was 22. So yeah, that's really all that I did today. And today I feel was great progress. Just waiting for my points to play out. Like I said, my pivot points that I've been using. Going back to taking shorter wins or shorter targets with just larger amounts of contracts to make sure the dollars add up fast. Of course, that means I can also lose fast, but my risk tolerance is fine with losing $200. If y'all go back to my video to where I was on my last trade of my evaluation and I fumbled over, like my mind was good as far as where I set my stop loss at, where I set my entry at, where I had my target at. The issue was that I had put in for so many contracts based on my, compared to my stop loss. And it wasn't the fact that I wasn't confident in the trade. It was just the number shock that got to me. When I saw that I was $1,000 drawdown, it was like $1,000, like that's a lot. But like I say, I pay more attention now. I make sure that even in the drawdown, even if it hits, that I'm only risking about $200. I do have confidence that if by any chance my stop loss does get hit, that it doesn't mean automatically that the trade is over. Sometimes it might wick up, hit your stop loss, and you'll be able to get right back in the same spot that you were at, and it goes ahead and goes on in the direction you expected. It's just part of the game. It is what it is. But anyways, I know it's been kind of a long video. That's pretty much where I've been, where I was at, and where I am. Next week, I'm going to try to actually start remembering to record as I'm trading. But yeah, I'm excited for Monday. I'm excited for this next week. And we're just going to keep pushing to be better. I feel that I'm confidently back to doing what I was doing initially that made me successful, and to get me so close to passing the evaluation the first time around. And now I'm working on, I still have a little bit of room to wiggle on my second evaluation, but it's very close to being blown. But we're going to see if we can work with that. And then, hopefully we can get it back into the green. But if not, that's fine. It is what it is. We'll then attempt to do the third evaluation and go from there. But thank you as always for tuning in. I know this has been long, but like I said, you saw where I was, you see where I am, and we're going to keep pushing forward and keep trying to turn this trading into a full-time thing. At least that's my goal and my desire. So nothing easy or nothing hard ever, nothing difficult is ever easy to obtain. You can't just take on a difficult task and expect for the steps to get there to be easy. But I'm out. Appreciate everybody as always. I'll check in with y'all on the next video.